Joseph and his brothers, betrayal turned into blessing. The night you sleep is not as quiet as you think. There are moments, between dreams and waking, when your body lies still, but something deeper is alert. A moment when the room feels heavier, when silence presses against your chest, when your thoughts drift into places you didn't choose. You turn in your bed, half asleep, and for a split second, you sense it, as if something is watching, waiting, listening. And by morning you wake up tired, not because you didn't sleep, but because something happened while you were asleep that you cannot fully remember. What if the most dangerous battles of your life are not fought when you are awake? What if the greatest attacks against your destiny happen when your defenses are down, your eyes are closed, and your prayers feel weakest? What if betrayal of fear and spiritual warfare do not begin in daylight, but in the dark? Long before palaces and crowns, before famine and forgiveness, before history remembered his name, there was a boy lying on the cold ground, staring into the dark, wondering why his own blood had turned against him. He had gone to them with obedience in his heart, carrying nothing but a father's trust and dreams he did not yet understand. By nightfall he was no longer a son, no longer safe, no longer protected. He was property, a secret, a problem his brothers thought they had buried. And as the stars watched from above, Joseph closed his eyes in a place where no one could hear him cry out. This is where most people think the story begins, but this is not where it truly started. Because betrayal is never just a human act, it is a doorway. There is a realm Scripture hints at but rarely explains in full. A realm where intentions are weighed, where fear is amplified, where dreams are contested. A realm that does not sleep when you do. And when Joseph lay in that pit, shaking, confused, heartbroken, something unseen took notice. Not because he was weak, but because he was marked. Night after night, as Joseph was dragged farther from home, sold, transported, imprisoned, his body rested, but his spirit was being trained. Every dream he dreamed, every nightmare he endured, every moment of silence where God felt distant was shaping something invisible before it ever became visible. People think spiritual battles look like lightning and fire, but most of the time they look like exhaustion. They look like confusion. They look like unanswered prayers whispered into pillows soaked with tears. They look like a believer wondering why obedience led them into darkness. Joseph could have stopped praying. He could have let bitterness lull him to sleep. He could have decided that silence meant abandonment. But even when his prayers felt weak, even when he could not see the outcome, something powerful was happening. Because prayers prayed in weakness do not disappear when you fall asleep. They linger. They echo. They stand watch when you cannot. There is a truth many never realize. Sleep is not a shutdown. It is a handoff. What you surrender consciously, your spirit continues unconsciously. And the battles you cannot fight awake are often fought on your behalf while you rest. In Potiphar's house, Joseph slept beneath a roof that was not his own, serving faithfully in a land that did not know his God. Yet favor followed him like a shadow. Integrity guarded him when temptation tried to rewrite his future. Even when false accusations dragged him into prison, something unseen remained untouched. Night after night in that prison cell, chains cold against his skin, Joseph slept, and while his body rested on stone, his destiny was being defended elsewhere. Dreams moved between realms, timelines were adjusted. What looked like delay was alignment. This is where the unseen battleground becomes clear. The enemy rarely destroys destiny head-on. He delays it, distracts it, exhausts it. He whispers lies in the quiet moments when your mind is tired and your heart is vulnerable. He attacks confidence at night and hope before dawn. He tries to convince you that what God promised will never come, not by shouting but by wearing you down. But Joseph's story reveals a counter-truth that shakes the darkness. When betrayal pushes you into the night, God does not abandon you there. He trains you there. Years later, when Joseph stood clean and clothed before Pharaoh, interpreting dreams that would save nations, no one saw the battles that had already been won while he slept. No one saw the nights when despair tried to claim him. No one saw the unseen victories that prepared him to rule without bitterness. And when the brothers returned, hungry, desperate, kneeling before the very one they tried to erase, the moment was not just emotional, it was cosmic. Joseph looked at the faces that once haunted his nights and realized something that changes everything for those who are willing to understand it. The attack was never about pain alone. It was about position. What was meant to destroy him had positioned him. What was meant to silence his prayers had strengthened them. What was meant for evil had been working toward good the entire time, even when he was asleep. This is why your nights matter more than you think. This is why the prayers you whisper before sleep are not small. This is why the darkness does not have the final word. Because even now, as you listen to this, there are battles you are not fighting alone, and outcomes being shaped that will one day shock you when they come into the light. And the most unsettling truth of all is this: the moment you stop praying because you feel weak is often the moment heaven moves closest. And this story is far from over. The silence after betrayal is never empty. It hums, it presses, it waits. Joseph learned that silence has weight. In the pit, in the caravan, in the prison, night after night, he discovered that darkness is not passive. It observes, it tests, it searches for cracks in belief the way water searches for stone. And when it finds even the smallest fracture, it whispers, "You will be forgotten. You were foolish to trust. God has moved on." Those whispers did not shout. They didn't need to. They arrived in the fragile space between prayer and sleep, when defenses soften and memories replay without permission. Joseph would close his eyes and see flashes of home, his father's face, the coat, the laughter that once felt permanent. Then the images would twist, bend, fade, replaced by the cold reality of iron bars and foreign walls. This is where many lose the battle. Not in rebellion, not in open denial, but in quiet resignation. There is a difference between sleeping in peace and sleeping in surrender. One restores you. The other slowly drains you of expectation, and the unseen realm knows the difference. Yet Joseph did something subtle and powerful. He kept his inner posture awake, even when his body rested. His prayers were not long. Sometimes they were barely words at all. Sometimes they were just breath. Sometimes they were nothing more than a thought offered upward before exhaustion took him. But intention matters more than eloquence, because intention gives permission, and permission determines access. What you invite before sleep often determines what is allowed to operate while you sleep. In prison, surrounded by despair, Joseph did not realize that his consistency, his refusal to let bitterness become his nighttime companion, was changing the atmosphere around him. Scripture says the Lord was with him, but presence does not always feel warm. Sometimes it feels like restraint. Sometimes it feels like protection you only recognize in hindsight. Others in the prison began to notice something unsettling about Joseph. Not his suffering, everyone suffered, but his steadiness. Dreams began to surface around him, night visions, disturbing images that troubled hardened men. The same realm that tried to suffocate Joseph was now forced to reveal itself through him. Dreams are not neutral territory. They are intersections. They are places where the conscious loosens its grip and deeper truths rise. That is why fear often intensifies at night. That is why anxiety waits for silence. That is why spiritual resistance often increases when progress is near. The enemy does not attack what is irrelevant. Joseph's gift did not awaken in comfort. It awakened in captivity. And every interpretation he offered was another quiet declaration that darkness would not control the narrative. Then came the night that changed everything. Pharaoh dreamed. A ruler with everything could not sleep because something unseen disturbed him. His power meant nothing in the face of a dream that refused to be ignored. This is a pattern that repeats across history. When God is about to shift outcomes on a global scale, sleep becomes the battleground. Joseph was summoned from a place he thought he might die into a room he never imagined entering. In a single moment, chains were removed, garments changed, destiny accelerated. Years of silence collapsed into seconds of clarity. But what few consider is this: Joseph did not suddenly become strong that day. He had already won. The true victory had happened in the nights no one saw, in the moments when he chose trust over despair, in the evenings when he laid his head down without knowing the future and still entrusted it to God. This is where the story begins to turn toward us. Because modern believers face the same battlefield, but with more noise. Screens glow until midnight, minds race long after lights go out, the body rests, but the soul scrolls endlessly through fear, comparison, outrage, and doubt. And then we wonder why sleep feels restless, why peace feels thin, why we wake up drained instead of restored. The enemy does not need a throne room to influence sleep anymore. He has bedrooms, phones, feeds, and unresolved trauma. Night attacks are rarely dramatic. They are subtle. They arrive as recurring thoughts, unexplainable heaviness, dreams that leave emotional residue long after waking. They convince people that prayer doesn't work because nothing changed overnight, ignoring the fact that some changes are being prepared beneath the surface. Joseph did not wake up every morning feeling victorious. He woke up faithful, and there is a difference. Faithfulness does not always feel powerful, but it is devastatingly effective. Years later, when famine spread and nations trembled, Joseph stood positioned not just to survive, but to save. And when his brothers arrived, trembling before him, still blind to who he had become, Joseph saw the full picture for the first time. The nights dot, the tears dot, the silence dot, the waiting. None of it had been wasted. He understood something that shattered the logic of revenge. What attacks destiny often ends up escorting it. He wept, not because he was weak, but because he was free. Free from the need to prove anything, free from the chains of resentment, free from the night that once tried to break him. This is the truth that shocks many when they finally grasp it. The enemy does not always lose by being defeated. Sometimes he loses by being overplayed. Every attempt to crush Joseph had moved him closer to influence. Every delay had refined his discernment. Every sleepless night had strengthened his spiritual authority. And now the same God who had watched over him in the pit was using him to feed the very ones who betrayed him. If that does not unsettle the darkness, nothing does. Because it reveals something terrifying to the forces that oppose purpose. When a believer refuses to stop trusting, even in sleep, every attack becomes evidence for the future testimony. And this is where the tension deepens. Because not all night battles feel spiritual at first. Some feel emotional. Some feel psychological. Some feel physical. And many people dismiss them until patterns emerge. Repeated exhaustion, sudden fear at night without cause, dreams that replay old wounds, a sense of resistance when trying to pray before sleep. These are not reasons for fear. They are indicators of importance. No one guards empty ground. The question is not whether battles happen at night. The question is who is allowed to operate in the space you hand over when you close your eyes. Joseph learned to surrender that space to God long before he saw the outcome. And that surrender became the very thing that protected him when he could not protect himself. Which leads to the most unsettling realization of all. Some victories are not fought awake because you would interfere. Some prayers work best when you are no longer trying to control the answer. And some breakthroughs arrive only after you finally rest. This story is still unfolding. Because the same God who guarded Joseph's sleep is watching yours. And the final revelation, the one that changes how you see night, prayer, and betrayal forever, is closer than you think. The question is whether you're ready to hear it. What Joseph lived in shadows, Jesus Christ revealed in light. Because when Jesus spoke, he did not dismiss the night, he redeemed it. He taught that the real war is not flesh and blood, not brothers and enemies, not betrayal and accusations, but something deeper, unseen, operating beneath the surface of ordinary life. He spoke of seeds sown while people sleep, of wheat and tares growing together unnoticed until harvest, of an enemy who comes quietly, not when alarms are sounding, but when vigilance fades. Jesus understood what Joseph lived without having language for it. The night is instructional. Again and again, Jesus withdrew to pray when others slept. While disciples rested, he wrestled. While crowds dispersed, he remained awake. And on the most critical night in human history, he entered a garden where sleep and spiritual battle collided. Gethsemane was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was heavy. Jesus told his disciples to watch and to pray, not fight, not plan, not speak, watch and pray, because he knew something they did not. The greatest threats approaching them would not look like soldiers at first. They would look like drowsiness, distraction, emotional overload, the slow erosion of resolve. They slept. Jesus stayed awake. And that difference changed history. He did not shame them. He explained them. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. That sentence unlocks everything. Jesus acknowledged that intention can exist without endurance, and that belief can coexist with exhaustion, and that weakness does not mean failure, but it does mean vulnerability. This is why he taught prayer not as performance, but as posture. He never said pray loudly. He said pray persistently. He never said pray impressively. He said pray honestly. And he knew something else, something unsettling. That even when prayer feels unfinished, it is still effective. On the cross, Jesus echoed Joseph's revelation without naming it. Betrayal by his own. Silence from heaven. Darkness covering the land. And yet, not once did he panic. Not once did he retaliate. Because like Joseph, he knew the outcome was already secured in realms unseen. What you meant for evil, Joseph said. Father, forgive them, Jesus said. Different words, same authority. Jesus taught that God works while people rest. He reminded his listeners that the farmer sleeps and rises, and the seed grows, even though he does not know how. That is not poetry. That is theology. It is a direct confrontation of human control. You are not the source of growth. You are the steward of trust. Jesus never promised that following God would prevent night battles. He promised that night battles would not prevail. He did not remove darkness. He walked through it and came out carrying keys. This is why his resurrection happened at dawn, not midday, not at night, at the edge. Because dawn is the answer to every unseen battle. It is proof that darkness is temporary, that silence is not absence, and that what is buried can rise stronger than what was visible before. Joseph rose from a pit to a palace. Jesus rose from a grave to glory. And both stories tell you the same thing. God does his deepest work when you cannot see him working. So when Jesus taught his followers to pray daily, he included night without naming it. Give us this day our daily bread. Bread does not bake instantly. It requires waiting, heat, timing, trust. Your sleep is not wasted time. Your weakness is not disqualification. Your unanswered prayers are not ignored. They are stored. And here is the truth that should stop you cold. Jesus never told you to win the battle alone. He told you to remain connected. Abide in me. That word, abide, means remain, dwell, stay, rest. Rest is not retreat. Rest is resistance. When you surrender the night to God, you are not becoming passive, you are becoming covered. You are allowing heaven to work where effort would fail. You are choosing faith over frenzy, trust over control. This is why betrayal did not destroy Joseph. This is why death did not defeat Jesus. And this is why the battles you don't remember may already be victories you haven't seen yet. Because the same God who watched over a pit, a prison, a garden, and a grave is watching over you. And the night, no matter how heavy it feels, has never been the end of the story. If you have ever laid in bed with tears you couldn't explain, if you have ever prayed and fallen asleep wondering whether God heard you, if you have ever woken up tired even after a full night's rest, this ending is for you. Joseph never knew the night he was thrown into the pit would echo all the way into a palace. Jesus never looked defeated on the cross by accident. He chose trust over escape. And you are not weak for feeling worn down. You are human standing on holy ground. The truth that shakes the soul is this: God does not abandon his people in the dark. He meets them there. Some of the most important prayers of your life were not the loud ones. They were the quiet ones. The half-finished ones. The whispered ones that slipped out just before the sleep took over. And heaven heard every single one. While you rested, God worked. While you slept, grace stood guard. While you felt forgotten, your story kept moving forward. One day, maybe sooner than you think, You will look back and realize that the nights you thought were attacks were actually a preparation. The delays were protection. The silence was shaping strength. And the betrayal that almost broke you was positioning you for a purpose greater than revenge. So tonight, when you lay your head down, don't fear the darkness. Invite God into it. Let him fight what you cannot see. Let him guard what you cannot control. And remember this, hold on to it tightly. If God carried Joseph through betrayal, if God carried Jesus through death, he will carry you through this season too. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. And your story is not over. If this message stirred something in you, if it spoke to a place words rarely reach, we humbly ask you, support this mission. Like this video so more parables can find hope. Share it with someone who needs strength tonight. Subscribe to Parables of Hope, because your response gives us the strength to keep creating stories that bring light into dark places. Go back and watch our previous videos. Walk this journey with us. Help us spread truth, hope, and faith across the globe. Because when light is shared, darkness loses ground. From our hearts to yours, may you sleep in peace. May you rise in purpose. And may you always remember God is still working, even when you close your eyes.